Thank you. So I'm Jean-Michel Franco, working at Talon in charge of the data governance offerings. So I've been involved in data privacy since a couple of weeks and months now. I will explain why first I think that it's a big thing that goes beyond the 25th of May. And I will explain also why I think this is mostly a data management challenge and also a customer relationship challenge rather than just a legal and compliance challenge. So Talon is a company that helps companies make the most of their data. So integrating data, managing data pipeline, bringing the data to the application and to the people that need to work with them. But, and this is a topic of the presentation, we know that it's not just about making the data available, but taking control over the data. So why is it important? First, so we know now that data is a new oil, so there's no doubt that the outcomes are big, and especially when it gets to relationship with people. So using machine learning, using big data for personalization has big impact. We know, and it's McKinsey numbers, that personalization can deliver huge ROI, can lift sales, so everybody is exciting on taking the most of the data. But the more there is value, the more there is risk. So if data is a new oil, we need to take care and to manage the risk of an oil spill. And we are hearing more and more those stories, and those are making the headlines. The people, the data subjects are now cautious about the use that we can make over the data. So we've heard a lot of stories. I didn't have time to update it with this new Facebook stories. So we see that bad use of data can impact the company market valuation. So Equifax lost $2 billion of market valuation after their breach. The CSO, the CEO, the CIO lost their job after they had their issues. We know that the risk of fines is getting high, so the cost of privacy are getting high. And it's also about how we can use big data. So an example is a recent issue and words of caution that happened with the biggest biometric database in the world, that is in India. And there are suspicions that the data could have been leaked by third parties. So we know that we need to make something, and the goal is to build a system of trust. So we need to implement some controls on top of the data so that we know exactly how they are used. And so in terms of data privacy regulations, we talk a lot about GDPR because it's, I would say, the why now. It's coming in now in something like 65 days, if I'm correct, or less than 70 days. But regulation around data privacy are blooming over the world. So we just launched a new white paper. We listed 110 regulations on privacy around the world. APAC is looking very closely on GDPR and establishing their new regulation. So this is not like year 2000. This is not a one-stop event. This will continue to grow, and you will have to take care on a global basis more and more about the privacy of your data in your system. So jurisdiction everywhere. The definition of personal data is moving on. Your car can be personal data as long as it's connected and it belongs to you. So the definitions are widening. The fines are getting up and up. So the stakes are getting higher and higher. And so for most companies, it starts with paperwork. It starts at the legal department. It starts of understanding what is the data. It starts with writing where is the data, writing the policies. But over time, company realizing that it's a data management challenge. And I took the surveys that show the most important challenge with GDPR. And so number 3 is managing consent, making sure that you capture the consent of your customers and employees and data subjects across the different channels, that you keep that consent in a single place where you know exactly what has been collected, what were the contracts, and where you can keep track so that you can make the proof that the customer has made the consent. So that's the first challenge, where you need to reconcile all your data, create a kind of 360 view so that you can track and make sure that the data is used for purpose. The second topic is the data subject access right. So when we think about privacy, we think about protecting the data. But the ultimate goal is that the data subjects, the customer, the employee, gets control over his own data. So it's not only a matter of data protection, it's also data publication. You need to open your data to your data subjects. And so currently, one of the key questions that I think you have to ask is, on the 25th of May, if I'm a customer of your company, how would I get the data? What is the process? Who I'm going to ask? And the guy to whom I'm going to ask, how can he get his data? Will it be totally manual? Probably not. Or you should hope that not too many people ask you. So how can you make it automatic? How can you make it transparent for your customers? So that's the second most important challenge and difficulties in those kind of projects, is how can I expose the data in something like a portal or in an environment where the customer or the employee can get access easily to the data, especially because the benefit for the customer is mostly data portability. So get all the data that you have about him so that he can exchange with other companies. So that's the benefit, and probably he will ask you, he will require that data. So number two challenge, I think that today we're discussing with companies, most companies are not ready to deliver that yet. And the third one is the right to be forgotten. So technically speaking is the most difficult, because it's not only about reconciling data. So we know we are pretty good at reconciling data, the data warehouse, the data lakes, the thing like that. So, okay, we know how to do it. But when it's about deleting the data, so closing back the loop with operational system, then it's much more difficult. So this right to be forgotten, even though depending on your industry, maybe not all customers will ask about that, because if you have fair relationship with your customer and if you provide value, there's no reason they ask for the right to be forgotten. But okay, when they ask, you need to be able to deliver these services, and it's pretty tricky. So what's involved? So what you need to do first is that you need to capture and track your personal data. So you need to get all the footprints that relates to personal data across your system. So it can be huge. If you take HR, for example, you have information about people in your payroll, you exchange with insurers, you might have system for incentive, you might have the performance management system. It could be something like 10 or 15 systems. So you need to capture those footprints across the different environments. Second, once you know where your data is, you need to foster accountability. So I'll take a concrete example. At Talent, we have credit card numbers of the employees that are in our travel system. And the travel system is a cloud-based system. It's Concur from SAP. So the one that decided to have this system, who decided that Talent employees have to give their credit card numbers to travel, the one that decided that it's a cloud system, he has to be responsible to be accountable of that, and to make sure that the contract with the cloud provider is good, etc., etc. So that's the second, the accountability that has to go across your company. Then you have to reconcile this data, because if you want to apply control on your data subjects, you have to have one place where you know exactly what data this is all about, and then you can apply the control. So what we see is a lot of companies are building some data lakes, some place where they can reconcile and put the data in one place to reconcile them. Then, once it's reconciled, you can apply the control. Like, I want to archive the data after a while, or I want to delete the data when it's requested. I want to mask the data when it's used not for purpose, and capabilities like that. So it's only once you reconcile that you can really apply the control. And finally, then you can make the data accessible to the data subject, which is the ultimate goal. Now the data is really in control by the data subject. So that's all the process that you need to establish. Sometimes it could be pretty simple with methodology, but okay, it's a significant data management effort that you need to establish. And that's why a lot of companies, when you ask, I think the companies that are ready for GDPR are the ones that say that they won't be ready. Because most companies say, okay, that's in process, we understand what we have to do. Some are difficult, like the right to be forgotten. Maybe we won't be fully ready in 25th of May, but we know the journey and we know what we have to do to comply. So what are the kind of pillars that you need to establish? So it starts with the 360-degree view of the data subject. So it might be small, because you don't have maybe so much attribute, but you need to create that 360-degree view. Then you need to map the data across your different system. Sometimes it can be heavy, so if you can take some scope out, some system, it's good. So using data masking, for example, for your data warehouse, can help to put the data warehouse out of the compliance project, because maybe in your data warehouse you have no reason to have personal data. So maybe in the history you used to put some emails or things like that. So if the purpose is not there, then you can mask the data. You need to put the responsibility across your company. So GDPR asks that you have a data protection officer, but there's no one guy in your company that will do it all for everyone. So he will need to delegate, and for that he will need to have some data stewards that are responsible of the data by domain, like HR or like a payroll or thing like that. So you need to delegate the responsibility and put some platforms on top of that. And last, you need to open the data, so you need to bring the data out to the data subject, so using capabilities like data services or data integration. So let's take a couple of examples. So you mentioned at the beginning that some companies were a little bit reluctant to claim victory before the 25th of May. So I used mostly anonymized examples. Some of them are okay to communicate their name, but also for sake of understanding, I wanted to have some examples that resonate to a specific industry. So let's take a first one, which is in banking. So it's a French company, one of the largest consumer credit provider in Europe, that has implemented a system for their customer 360. And so this is tricky in this industry. You know, I mentioned Equifax. There has been some issues with Equifax, with data breach. So if I'm a customer and I want to have a credit, I know that they will try to do some precision scoring, so have very sensitive information about my financial health. So I might be reluctant to give the data. So it's very important for them to get consent on the data to avoid things like what happened to Equifax. But on the other hand, they need to bring trust with their customer. For example, they are asking for the Facebook profile. But when they ask for the Facebook profile, they have to be pretty clear on how they will use your data about Facebook or LinkedIn. So how they are doing that? So they have created a data lake where and the goal of the data lake is that the data gets seen only when there is a consent of the customer. So the consent is part of the capturing process of the data, and also it's about bringing this data to a wide range of people. And making the benefits pretty clear. So, for example, for customer services, one of the benefits is when you call their customer services, they have the information about you directly when they hang up the phone, so they make the conversation much shorter on the phone. So they wanted really to make sure that for everything they can get, the customer can get the benefits of giving their personal data. And so that helped them to bring in very sensitive data like click streams, like the social network that I mentioned. So it's really all about creating this 360-degree view data lake, but having the consent, the capture of consent as part of the data ingestion process. Second example, so I like it because I'm a personal, I personally benefit from that. It's a transportation use case. In fact, it's Air France KLM. And so in this industry, they want to differentiate with customer relationship. You know, the airplane app is one that you have open pretty when you travel. So you know that they are tracking a lot of things, location. They have a lot of information about you, sensitive information about you, but for convenience, it's important that they can be in contact with you. And one of the examples they bring to the customer is managing the lost items. You know, most airplane company, when you lose your phone or iPad in a plane, they give it back to the airport, and then it's a mess for you as a traveler because the airport doesn't know you. You have to go back to the airport to get your lost item. So it's really painful when you lost your item. So kind of what they want to do with their system is being able to help you, because when they see a mobile phone in a plane, they have your contact, so they can call you. But then they get a lot of information about you. So it's all about getting a lot of information about the customer all along their journey, but also keeping track, making sure that they mask it in their data warehouse and things like that. So applying also the controls on the personal data. So getting very deep in what they can do with personal data, but on the other side, getting very strict on the control that they can apply. So they are using technologies like metadata management, to have a 360, I would say, online and ever accurate view of all the personal data that they can manage. They are using a lot of anonymization, so that in their profiling system, they don't have the personal data when it's not mandatory. Or capability like that. So it's the technology is, once again, it's a data lake together with metadata management and data quality and data masking. I will skip the charity use case and rather go to the automotive use case, data brokering. So this company is one of the biggest seller of personal information in Europe. So they maintain a huge database. In their country, it's 70 million individuals. And so this company is monetizing data and monetizing personal data. So that's very important for them that they comply, of course, with GDPR, because the data brokers are probably the first one that would be under the radar of the organization. And how they want to manage that, what is interesting is that they say, okay, we need to have a collaborative approach. So we need to engage most of our employees. So there are 80 employees within the company. Among these 80 employees, 25 people are working on the IT, and 30 are working on the link to data governance and capability like that. And so what they are implementing is a kind of collaborative approach where anyone is involved in the process of getting data in, because they capture data from websites, from immatriculations, files and things like that. So they are capturing a lot of data, and they want to make sure that when they are capturing data, it's tracked, and it's a collaborative approach between the business and between IT to make sure that over time the data can come from raw data to something that is controlled, that is sanctioned, and then can be shared and sold to third parties. So their approach with GDPR is really to engage everyone into the process of managing the data privacy. Last example is something that we, in fact, it's something, I won't mention the customer, but it's something that we announced with the partners. And currently it's in, you will see that the screens are in French, it's being translated. So the idea was to say, okay, if we want to manage personal data, we need to give the feedback loop to the customer. So we need to be able to implement into our web application, into our mobile application, a portal, a control center where the data subject could go and see exactly this data, require the electronic version of the data for data portability, ask to be forgotten, and things like that. So that's the kind of application that this partner package. It's an application where you can have the right to access, you can manage your consent, you can ask for an electronic version of your data, and then you can ask for the right to be forgotten. So I wanted to take this really concrete example of companies, how they are managing their privacy. And so as a wrap-up, so first, data privacy goes beyond GDPR. We should be lucky, because we are lucky because we have this opportunity to engage to build this system of trust, but it's something that will be continuous. Companies need to realize they need to move away from paperwork and build a system of trust that can manage on an ongoing basis this customer privacy. And I mentioned the opportunity. I think it's really a step up for data governance. It's allow data professional like you to put the topic to a exec audience and then to engage the project. And it's also a key pillar for customer intimacy program. So thanks a lot. If you're more interested, so Talent Booth has a white paper that shows more in detail the kind of milestones that you need to implement into a data privacy program. I hope it was inspiring, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much.